Welcome. We're one day before the quarterfinals of the World Cup. The question is, why is this World Cup even happening in the country it is happening? And this country is Qatar, a country that spent 15 times the amount of money than the previous host of the World Cup spent. 15 times. Put differently, if you take all the World Cups that happened through my lifetime, and you add how much money that these countries spend for the World Cup, it's less than the money that Qatar spent. So Qatar is trying to do something with this World Cup. It's also trying to do something with the fact that it throws money like there's no tomorrow in football, whether in buying teams like Paris Saint-Germain, which is technically owned by a fund, but it's basically the Qatari government, by giving tens of millions to football legends like David Beckham to be their ambassadors. So Qatar is trying to get something out of this tournament. It wants to parade to the world that, hey, look, here we are. We're so great. So we're going to discuss this topic today, the topic of the world class, with at least two more football fans. I don't know about Mark, what's his relationship to football or as soccer, as it's called. Soccer, as it's called in the US. So we've got Jax today. We've got Supreme Leader Ginsberg himself, and also we've got Mark. And Supreme Leader.
I just want you to know something from the top, Nikos. Me and football are not on speaking terms.
Well, you are missing a lot, or maybe you are not. Maybe you're. I was thinking, if I was not following football, how much more productive my life would be. I would have all these hours to spend on something else, but then I wouldn't be the same person. Okay, so let us begin with Razi. So, Razi, you've been the most vocal of us when it comes to this World Cup. If I understood well, you are actually you're not watching the World Cup because you are morally deflated by the fact that it takes place in Qatar. So what's your take on the whole Qatar World Cup situation?
Yeah, first of all, Supreme Leader makes me sound like I should be running Qatar. But yeah, I wouldn't say, I don't put it as boycotting. I know this is kind of disappointing, it looked like it could be a debate between Nikos and myself, and there are topics that it would actually be a debate. Like if we were talking about how to cook a steak, this would not be a friendly discussion. But yeah,
we're throwing spaghetti against a wall, Razi. That would be
we can
very unfriendly discussion.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not watching the World Cup mostly because I'm, as I've told you, Nikos, I'm more disgusted by the fact that it's in Qatar than I am a fan of football. So it is, I miss, having watching the World Cup. I love it. I, look forward to it. But yeah, it's so disgusting. And I've recently watched the Netflix documentary about FIFA, and that pisses me off even more. Everything about that organization is corrupt. Everything about how
for our viewers who are not familiar with it, FIFA is the organizing institution, let's say, in football. It's the World Football Federation, which is the one that decides who gets the World Cup. So in 2010, in one day, they decided in 2018 the World Cup goes to Putin's Russia, in 2022 to Qatar. What a bright day it was for international football.
and that was on that day, there were different countries that were candidates for hosting the World Cup, among them England and the US. And one thing that's sort of leaving aside the political situations in countries certainly like Qatar is that if you think about the investment required, like England can host a World Cup that starts tomorrow. If suddenly they announce it, there's no need to build. The stadiums are here, the transport infrastructures, the hotels, everything you need for a World Cup we already have it here. In the US, maybe you need a week to make the football stadiums more actual football friendly or soccer friendly.
Take away the American
we have actual big soccer stadiums here.
Yeah. Actually, you do have a major league soccer.
And actually, Jack, that's actually even proven by the data. The World Cup of 94 in the United States, which was the first World Cup I watched from the first day until the last game, it was the one with a lower cost because they didn't need to do almost anything. I mean, most of the stadiums were there because they were stadiums that were used for American football mostly. So it cost less than $1 billion. I think it's the only World Cup that cost less than $1 billion. Again, Qatar's World Cup, more than 200 billion, 15 times more than all the previous tournaments.
And
Razi,
correct me if I'm wrong in terms of like the corruption of FIFA, but as I understand it, the country, even the local regions that host the games don't actually reap the profits. They would from an influx of locals frequenting restaurants and whatnot, but in terms of the actual profits from the games, that all goes to FIFA. Am I wrong with that?
Well, you could say that they reap a lot of profits from other areas. But here's the thing. You reap a lot of profits.
But taxes have to get raised for places where stadiums aren't built. The taxes get raised and the governments pay for this. So the citizens are paying for them through taxes.
Oh, yeah. And again, we're talking here about an investment which there's not a chance in a million that they're going to get their money back. And my point with this is that Qatar didn't take the World Cup because they wanted to make money or to fix their infrastructure. They were already a rich country. They did it because they wanted to tell the world, look, we're like you. Okay, yeah, maybe homosexuality is illegal. Maybe women are second-class citizens, but we're all friends here. Yeah. And the useful idiots of FIFA said, yeah, you're right. Football is uniting us. Well, we have your differences. You know, you torture people. Allegedly, you fund terrorism. Officially, you throw loads of money to Hamas. But, who cares? We're all friends here.
And what do you guys think about the kafala system? For you guys, I did a little bit of research on that. Are you familiar with that? With the system of how they bring employees over to work to build the stadiums?
Okay, so there's the number one controversy about Qatar has not been what type of regime it is, the things that we mentioned, how it treats LGBT people, how it treats women, its alleged links with very questionable groups, but has been the treatment of foreign workers, of immigrant workers. So there are reports that thousands of workers have lost their life working in Qatar. Now, the libertarian will say, who cares? This is their choice. This is the free market. You don't like the work, you leave. But here's the catch. In Qatar, you couldn't leave.
That's true. They take your passport. And
they take your passport. Or they blackmail you in other ways. There were workers who had to commit acts of violence against other workers or acts of vandalism consciously because this was their last hope that they might be able to be deported. So this means they could not leave. So the people who were working under the torching sun for God knows how many hours every day, they were not people who just say, okay, I don't like my job and I leave. And again, there have been reports that the Guardian or some group says even as high as 6,000 people might have lost their life. But even if it's significantly less, many people have lost their life. And even if no one had lost their life, still this system where you are not allowed to leave or it's not clear what type of contract you sign, this is not a regime that should be in place. So from whichever angle you watch it, violation of individual rights, violation of the rights of LGBT people, of women, of Qatar shouldn't get this tournament.
I agree.
Well, this is Mark's contribution because he opened his cards in the beginning. He's not big on football.
I think states like this should be kicked out of every multinational athletic event. I don't think China or Russia or Qatar or any of the Islamic State or any of these Islamic, the Saudi Arabian regime, all of these states should be out of the Olympics. They should be out of any international competition, period. We're not here to serve as a platform for their quote unquote legitimacy amongst the nations of the world. They are illegitimate, and we should not recognize them as legitimate. The question is, how much do you think altruism drives this, right? So they reject the first world great, nations that are basically driven by capitalism, like America and England, and they go to these crap nations like Russia and Qatar. How much do you think altruism drives that?
So it does drive them, particularly if you watch the documentary that Razi mentioned. It's on Netflix. It's 4 episodes. And the idea is we need to expand football to new territories, which is perfectly okay. But this is not the same as saying I will throw morality out of the window. So notice here the contradiction. On the one side, we say we want to do something moral. We want to give football to people who didn't have the chance to see these players before. And at the same time, they say, oh, but in pursuing this supposedly moral aim, let's leave morality aside. So is this regime doing bad things? Who cares? Is this, let's not bring politics into it, which is a stupid argument. No one is bringing, quote, politics into it. We're not bringing whether we're going to vote for Trump or Biden. We are bringing that you have a law that says that it's illegal to be an LGBT person. You have a official system which requires that a woman is guarded by a chaperone, how it's called, the guardianship system, which treats women as second-class citizens and unmarried women as third-class citizens. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're bringing in the discussion. We're not bringing, quote, politics in the discussion.
But I don't like the fact that they separate politics from ethics. Right. I mean, all of it's interconnected. You can't separate the two. So, and maybe this will be a lesson for them. If they watch this show, they'll see how they're connected.
I don't think it's possible for FIFA to be uncorrupted. Everything that I've seen. I don't know if you guys ever watched John Oliver. He's definitely a controversial person, but he is a very close follower of FIFA, and he's done. Over the years, he's done maybe 5 or 6 different episodes on FIFA, and every time I learn about them, they're so corrupted that, and the rest of the world seems to just let them go. That the only people that ever stopped them was the IRS, or the not the IRS, but the U.S. Treasury, the U.S. Treasury Department. Right? It took the U.S., which really I love our contribution to soccer and everything. It's cute. And it was really sweet that we drew with England, and now we've gone home and we're going to go back to American football. But it's shocking to me that the rest of the world doesn't do anything about it. And there were so many incidents with so many incidents that just reinforced how corrupt they are. First of all, I can't remember if we talked about this in the beginning, but there is very good evidence that they were bribed, that Qatar bribed, that both Russia and Qatar bribed FIFA to hold the World Cup in their locations. And there was evidence of bank deposits and whatnot. And then secondly, they were going to hold the World Cup this year at the normal time, right? What's the normal time for the World Cup to be held?
Every World Cup takes place June and July. This is the first time, at least in my living memory, and at least throughout the last, since the 70s, where a World Cup is taking place in November and December. It cuts the football season in half. This is unprecedented.
Right. And the reason being is how hot is it in Qatar? And it can get up to 122 degrees. But if you think that that's bad for the players, what about the people that had to build the stadiums? And those are the people so they are speculating that up to 4,000 workers have died since the building of these stadiums have died, at least up until 2018. but they're not going to release any real stats on that. So it's just, I don't see any hope for uncorruption to happen. I don't know. What do you guys think?
By the way, just to point out for our non-US audience, that's 122 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's still very hot.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
This is 48. This is on the high 40,
48 or 50
degrees.
Celsius, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point about the corruption, yeah, that's true. And Mark, you asked if this is altruism. It's not altruism. It's like the package deal of selfishness. It's basically, people voted for the World Cup to take place in Qatar and Russia because they got paid for it. They got, envelopes with money, with cash. That's at least.
Well, this is the problem is though that you can never know with FIFA where it's an official bribe, because what happens often in FIFA is I go to Razi and say, "Hey, Razi, here is 25 million for your football federation. Do whatever you want with this, no questions asked. Oh, by the way, can you vote that country? It would be appreciated." Now, is this a bribe?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not only the World Cup. So Qatar, as a government, almost officially owns Paris Saint-Germain, the team that has Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe. Imagine an NBA team having LeBron, Steph Curry, and Durant, like the three most expensive players around, playing in the same team. Abu Dhabi, via a quote fund, which is the government, owns Manchester City, and they've spent something like $2 billion in the last years. And now Saudi Arabia has entered this competition, so to speak, on who will spend the most, and has acquired Newcastle United.
Saudi Arabia owning Newcastle is interesting because Newcastle, for years, their fans have been on this endless campaign against the businessman who owned Newcastle, who owns this chain of sporting goods.
Sports Direct.
In the UK. And they're very happy with the Saudis taking over. So
well, they're not evil capitalists like the Sports Direct guys. So anyway,
yeah, which shows this is the problem is much deeper than one World Cup happening in an evil country, and it's the whole way we think about our own countries in the West and how we should deal with the bad regimes.
And let me throw another question to the table, which I already alluded to the answer. Why are they throwing these absolute crazy amounts of money? Paris Saint-Germain hasn't won the World Cup, although they've spent all that money and they've accumulated this firepower of players. And even Roman Abramovich, who has thrown all that money in Chelsea, did he really make a profit? Chelsea almost every season is operating at a loss because these people are throwing money. So they're not throwing, let's say, £100, and then they say, if I have a profit this year from tickets or from TV contract, we're gonna use this £100, which became 120. They throw money every year. They throw new money, which technically it's not allowed because there's a thing called financial fair play. And UEFA knows that Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City are basically doing whatever they want with the financial fair play, but they're not particularly
Barcelona did get some sort of penalty, right? They couldn't buy players for a while.
This is the reason why Messi left Barcelona, because even if Messi would play for nothing, Barcelona wouldn't be able to afford his contract due to financial fair play. By the way, also Barcelona has links with Qatar because Qatar Airlines was their sponsor. So here's my question to the group. You are a sheikh, you have a lot of petrodollars. Why do you throw them in football like there's no tomorrow?
I think the same reason the emperors threw lots of money into Colosseum games. It's distracting and it draws a lot of attention and it gets a lot of political play. and you're not, you're not changing anything. But you're making people sort of high on the aphrodisiac of the game.
So you're saying it's a distraction for what's really for the evil that their country represents.
On one level, they're getting, I think, a certain amount of political legitimacy because they're brought into the community of nations. And on the other hand, it seems to be a boon for the people, the local people, and even though it may be short-lived or may not really do much to the economy overall. And it's a distraction. It's a distraction from how awful they are.
What do you think, Razi?
I mean, to Nikos's question, if I was some sort of Arab dictator, I would quit. As the saying goes. But I think Mark is right, and there again, like, my problem is how the West generally deals with these countries. All of a sudden there's a World Cup in Qatar, so all of a sudden we notice that that women are second-class citizens and that homosexuality is illegal. Like, this was no secret up until the World Cup, and
Right.
Russia invades Ukraine, so all of a sudden we have a problem with Russia. I mean, Mark said this at the beginning of the episode. We generally should have an approach to evil countries that do evil things to their own citizens, even if they're not about to attack us, of not recognizing them as legitimate regimes any more than we would recognize a gang that takes over a neighborhood as the official, police or government of that neighborhood.
Small clip material, Daniel. If you're hearing, I really like that. Even if it's a 20-second clip, that was a great point.
Way to
And
go,
one
Razi.
last, what?
Way to go, Razi. Sweeps in here. He never comes on. Then he sweeps in, and he does a quotable moment.
That's it. That's
My
the
second
supreme,
short clip, I think, in the history of TDO, right?
That's why he's the supreme leader. Okay, some super chats. So first of all, I want to say to Marilyn, I so appreciate that you watched back to back the New Idea Live, where I was there with the same topic, and also the Daily Objective. You're gonna be the biggest expert in Qatar after this back-to-back 2 episodes, and thank you so much. It's really appreciated. So, and Marilyn says Qatar is trying to whitewash evil, and again, this is why they pay all this money to recruit people like David Beckham. In the past, it was Zinedine Zidane. There are also some other legends of football to become, quote, cultural ambassadors. And I'm talking about a lot of money. $12 million per year is allegedly the fee that Beckham is
And
paid.
he does it. And he does it. And he's the one that gives the name to people who are like, and we wonder why businessmen are painted so badly. It's because these people who are the emissaries for capitalism do this. They have no moral bottom line.
Well, and the players especially, I have a lot of heart for the players that wanted to wear the armbands, right? They wanted to wear the armbands in support of LGBTQ, but FIFA quashed it. The Iranians didn't refuse to sing their national anthem in support of the Iranian women. Their families were threatened, so they had to sing it. I mean, these are, and then you've got David Beckham, who's taken, millions and millions of dollars to sit in the desert and say, "I love this."
That disqualifies him from the human race, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how anybody else feels about that. And do you have a moral obligation? I mean, this is a topic I think maybe slightly different, but to wear that armband as an individual, even though it may.
So so this raises the
a
question:
moral obligation? I don't know.
To the righteousness of the cause. I mean, to something that goes beyond your salary, so to speak.
So I wouldn't put the football players on the spotlight for this. So imagine a very young football player like Bellingham or Fontaine. They're 20 years old, and someone tells them, "What are you going to do about the World Cup?" It's the career challenge of their life. I would put the blame first of all to FIFA, and then to everyone else who didn't make a lot more noise when Qatar won the World Cup. when they got the World Cup in 2010. This is when people should say not. What happened now is 5 days before the game, they go to the football players and say, what are you going to do? Are you going to boycott it? Well, it wasn't of their own making. Now, there's another discussion to be had that many of these football players, they still do the kneeling of Black Lives Matter when it's safe. And you would expect that if you're so vocal about human rights, maybe you would do something. Also in this case, particularly in this case. But I will not put the blame on football players. It's the challenge. It's a career challenge of their life. And at
I
the same
think the
time,
moral obligation should be on FIFA, not as much on the players.
Exactly.
They're sweeping you. You have become a part of this propaganda machine. You're now a cog in the machine. That's like saying that any individual camp, like camp operator or guard in a concentration camp is not in some way morally culpable for the vast amount of murder that was committed there. Of course you are. It goes all the way down the fucking chain. Pardon my French. And I think you are morally culpable as well as an individual, right? I mean, I think you're doing yourself greater harm by cutting your values off, your sense of right and wrong ethics, and putting it somewhere else for the opportunity, but for the moment to play. Like I just think it's too much. I think
there was that moment when England was playing Iran, right? Which was not a good look for the England players, who decided not to wear the armband because they were about to get a fine, and then the Iranian players protested by not singing their national anthem, and they could have, their family disappear or something like that. Over that. So yeah, again, like Nikos said, the English players are very brave in the UK to kneel and do the Black Lives Matter thing when it's politically.
In Qatar as well. That's okay. You can do that.
Yeah, exactly. You can protest against the West in Qatar.
You just can't wear a rainbow armband or anything that supports women or LGBTQ.
Yeah, I think the responsibility goes down the chain, man, and I think the players are partly responsible too, because they don't have to play. Without them, there's no World Cup. They could say, "Screw you, we're on strike. You have nothing without us." They have a lot more bargaining power than we're giving them credit for, right? If they were to stand in solidarity.
Yeah. By the way, Nikos, is there anybody that would impress me if there was one player of the 31 other countries who are traveling to Qatar who said, "No, I will not play, as much as this is my life and the World Cup is the biggest stage for a football player. I will not participate in this because we are sanctioning an evil regime." Was there anybody who said that?
Oh, no. And there was also a lot of discussion. There was also a lot of discussion about the 1978 World Cup, which is the World Cup that took place in Argentina during the brutal dictatorship of Videla. And when I say brutal, I mean brutal. If you read stories about the dictatorship of Videla, you're going to have trouble sleeping at night. And Johan Cruyff didn't go there. And actually, Netherlands made it to the final, but without Cruyff, they lost from the host Argentina. But it never became clear why exactly he didn't go. So there were people who spoke up against the 78 World Cup. And there were also football players who did speak up. But no prominent football player actually boycotted the World Cup. And the question is, should the fan boycott the World Cup? So I didn't boycott watching the World Cup, and here's what I had in mind. So I'm not giving money to Qatar in any way. So it's particularly since it's on free TV. At some point there was a decision that many games would be on a, how do you call it, a pay and watch. I decided I wouldn't pay, but because this proved to be a fiasco, they put all the games in free TV. So I thought it would be sacrifice from my part without anything in return. Like I wouldn't hit Qatar in any way. So I prefer to speak up.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily true, because you're one of the 3.5 billion viewers that they're throwing advertising money into. Right?
Yeah,
they're making their money off of advertising.
think the responsibility chain goes all the way around, man. There's just no way to avoid it. There's just no way to avoid it.
In
Now,
France, they didn't have any public viewing parties because they were they were protesting the Qatari human rights.
Well, that remains to be seen, particularly if they win on Saturday. But no, I stand by my decision. I stand by my decision not to boycott it. It would do nothing to harm Qatar, and it would harm the value which is football in my life. So so that's why I decided not to boycott. And again, I understand players who suddenly they find themselves the responsibility: should I boycott or not? The mistake is FIFA's, and FIFA should solve this problem. This is not the players. This is not the players' problem.
Razi, do you agree with that?
I don't think it's immoral to watch the World Cup. Yeah, you as one viewer, that's not the end of the world. But yes, it is.
But everybody says that 3 billion people say it, and they watch. And they get advertising revenue from that, because everybody's saying the same thing. Everybody's bowing out and saying, well, I'm not morally responsible. I can watch this horrific thing take place in this country that doesn't deserve my attention. How can you not be morally culpable in some way? Even if it's
because you take into account the context.
Yes, I know.
And the context is I wouldn't affect a single person. I would only harm myself.
Yeah, I mean, another question, like how far do you take this? So like I own an iPhone, it's made in China, which is an evil regime. Like how far, like some of the clothes I wear are made in countries that I would not approve of.
If they're using slave labor, for sure, you probably should not buy that brand that is using slave labor. But we all know that sweatshops and places where people are employed that make far less money than people in the West are actually an economic boom for those people, and it's actually a good thing that they're
but the regime in which those factories are located, certainly with the iPhone, are evil regimes. So there is a question of like how much of it becomes a sacrifice on my part. Like I don't think I could have any smartphone, right? Some part of it is made in some horrible country. So yes, I think it's important to sort of speak up and fight against this, but
that's sort of okay. I mean, all right, I feel that's a little different, but all right.
So Mark, if there was let's say that there's an MMA fighter that you follow and you discover that he is a domestic violence abuser,
would not watch
has been in jail, are you going to watch that fight?
No.
No, not even to see his ass get kicked?
If I find out he's an active criminal, he beats up women, no.
So, for example, I didn't watch the 2020 NBA playoffs. This was the time when Black Lives Matter was officially the sponsor of the league. But I didn't consider it as a sacrifice. And here's the difference. So I was, as Razi said, I didn't say now I'm making a stand. I was just put off. Because then the players took the active step of supporting a movement that was a bad movement. I remember the Milwaukee Bucks, they walked out of a game because they called the judge and they told him, you're going to go and arrest this police officer. Otherwise, we're not going to play. And I was thinking, what are you doing? You're calling a judge, telling him what to do? Or to the police. I don't remember exactly what I was doing. So there was a case that was put off with the players. In this case, it's difficult for me to be put off with the players because they didn't do directly an endorsement of something bad as it happened with the 2020 playoffs. Of course, Qatar government is worse than Black Lives Matter movement, but it was different in terms of then we had a positive, how to put it, endorsement of the bad things of this movement by the NBA. Anyway, let's finish with the super chat. So, Jeff, thank you very much. Goal, he says, and he sends us 20 Canadian. Ashley says a person willing to visit Qatar needs a psychological evaluation. Actually, I would say also they have a high risk tolerance because, hey, that's a place where you can do a public PDA and you can get into trouble. Apollo Zeus, thank you very much. Jeff does something which looks like very generous, but I have no idea what it is. It says Jeff gifted 5 Ayn Rand Center UK memberships. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but
basically it means that 5 people got a 1-month membership to our YouTube channel because of Jeff. And this is not the first or second time that Jeff has done this. And he's also given some very generous contributions recently. So thanks again, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. And thanks again, Marilyn, who gives us a super chat to thank Jeff. Beckham says, Marilyn, however, should have said no. Absolutely agreed. And as I said no to even give 5. I think the fee to watch the game in the online, in the platform was something like £3 per month. And I said, no, I'm not even giving £3 per month to Qatar. Okay. Then Robert says, for complex cases, know the components of the mixture and judge by essentials to the extent possible. See The Cult of Moral Greyness by Ayn Rand. Yes, and I'm not claiming that what I told you right now is a philosophical treatise of whether you should boycott or not. Actually, I had a short discussion with some of the intellectuals I respect in the Ayn Rand Institute, with some of my philosopher colleagues there. And it's a difficult issue. It's very difficult issue. So Ayn Rand, for example, said you should boycott the Olympic Games of 1918 in Soviet Union. So is it of the same gravitas? Again, it's a difficult discussion. So what I said was a personal view. Obviously, it wasn't like a philosophical treatise. Anyway, a big thank you to our super chatters who were quite generous today. Any final thoughts, my friends?
I think in a situation like this, we're probably both right. See, it's not much of a sacrifice for me not to watch football. So I can certainly get on my soapbox and say, screw these guys, I don't want to watch them. But under the same circumstances, I probably wouldn't, I definitely wouldn't pay for an MMA fight that was, that hosted somebody who was a notorious criminal and, beating up women. And I probably wouldn't watch it either, but I wouldn't consider that. I wouldn't consider it a sacrifice. I think certainly you get far more joy out of football, even than I do from MMA. So I'm willing to cut it off for those values.
And I think it might be an interesting topic. There was a comment in here from it's not a super chat, but just on that topic that I asked you about, Mark. Somebody said, Christopher Smith said, hopefully the UFC wouldn't let them fight either, but that is so not the case. How many professional sports, how many professional athletes are out there, especially it's notorious in the NFL and the NBA, who get into trouble all the time. They're, DUIs, they're beating on their women, they're,
but I think
drugs, whatever, and they just get a pass.
I think
right?
The UFC is definitely a different sanctioning body. I think they do hold those guys to a different moral account than the NFL or the NBA. Maybe because the money's less substantial, maybe because Dana White has more control over the working elements than the people do in the NBA. But I don't think a guy could get away with that. I think, each and every fighter is a brand.
You don't think you could have a Mike Tyson in the MMA,
no.
UFC?
No. Because the UFC is a whole organization. It's not like separate sanctioning bodies and fighters essentially independent, and then gaining titles through these separate sanctioning bodies. It's a whole thing. It's a whole business model. You're a brand within that business model. You represent the UFC. You get I think Dana White would look. I mean, he suspended somebody who went off a little bit in a fight who sucker punched somebody. After the bell, he didn't even connect with his left hook, and Dana White said, "You're out of the UFC permanently. You're done." Fighters have done that before. They get suspended or they get fined, but they don't get banned from any WBC or WBA, IBF sanctioning fight.
That might be an interesting topic for another discussion, just in terms of how people are more willing to forgive professional athletes for their moral sins or even actual criminal sins because they're professional athletes and we still want to watch them.
I was in a moral dilemma the day after Kobe died because I was a huge fan, and I wrote something like a eulogy, how it's called in English. It's a Greek word. I call it however I want. Eulogy. Anyway, I wrote one obituary, let's say, for Spiked Online, and there is this dark moment and this case that allegedly there was sexual violence. And my point was, this is not why Kobe was admired. He was admired for other things. But if someone would say, look, we know for sure that he did it, would that change your mind? Yes, that would definitely.
I mean, that case was dropped. So, right. So that's the fact that somebody was accused of something.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
It's not the same thing as we're seeing NFL guys knock, their girlfriends out in elevator cameras. It's like you're seeing it. It's captured on film. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He did that.
And then they're playing Sunday, right?
And then they're playing Sunday. That should be, you're done. You are done.
I mean, we actually had a discussion on the channel, me and James Valiant, about a famous athlete in the US who literally got away with murder. So based on a lecture by Peikoff about that famous case, which
would that be O.J. Simpson?
Yeah. Oh yes. There you go. Well,
okay.
That was a confluence of social forces that that was unfortunate. I think it had more to do. Anyway, forget it. I'm
perhaps the only person in the universe who, when I watched the Netflix TV series and I went in a rabbit hole, I thought that probably he was innocent. But anyway,
I don't know how you got that from the show.
No, God.
Because my idea was, there's no way someone who has achieved so much in his life can be so stupid that can do a murder and leave all these traces behind.
Oh yes, there is a way.
But he's not. It's not stupidity. It's malignant narcissism and rage and being used to getting his way and being an emotional child, which is essentially what he was. He can't see past his feelings at all. And there's lots of people that I think sort of testify to his narcissism today. And so it's not surprising to me that he would, go there in a rage and then, see something that inflamed him even more and not be able to pull himself out of that spiral.
Also, my epistemology was screwed up. So instead of saying what happened, I was trying to find, is there an alternative theory?
Also, okay, I'm not sure how you see somebody getting in a car and running away as, a sign of him being innocent.
With a passport, with a fake beard and $10,000 in his car.
Okay.
Next thing you know, he'll be running for senator.
Oh, he's
upcoming shows, people.
He's in the right company.
In 15 minutes, the Briefly Objective premiere. So, reminder: the Briefly Objective is the other channel of Ayn Rand Center UK, which has shorter videos. So, think of Joe Rogan's channel, and then he has the Joe Rogan highlights, how it's called. This is the ARCUK
but better
highlight
than Joe Rogan.
So what?
But better content than Joe Rogan.
Better content. So that's the Briefly Objective. Then at 9 p.m. UK time, we've got Ask Harry Anything with Harry Binswanger, and 10 p.m. UK time. So busy Thursday, the one day without World Cup, you can consume a lot of ARCUK stuff. Life on Earth with Robert Nasir, Peace on Earth, Goodwill Towards Men. That sounds like
Ask Harry Anything. By the way, that's not a mistake. This is the first time that Harry has done 2 episodes of HBTV in 1 week. So hopefully you'll join us and let us know what you think. Do you want to see HBTV twice a week more often?
Yeah, imagine some years ago, how many objectives would say, I wish I could ask Harry this. Now you can literally do it. Is it that only members and super chatters can ask?
Yes. And it's
for
worth
the price of a super chat or for being a member of ARCUK, not only you support the best how to put it. Anyway, the best channel out there, but also you get to ask perhaps the most brilliant active philosopher in the world today. You can ask him anything. On that happy note, Jax, Mark, and Razi, thank you very much. See you all. Oh, last question. Jax, which team do you support in the World Cup?
Which team do I support in the World Cup?
Yeah, from the ones remaining.
Oh gosh, I don't even know. It's probably gonna be, well, let's see. Who do we have? We have France, Netherlands. Do we have
Okay.
Netherlands?
Hoping we're not gonna miss members. France, England, I'm with France, sorry. Argentina, Holland, I'm with Messi. Not with Argentina, with Messi. Portugal, Morocco, I'm with Cristiano and the Portugal manager, because he was the manager of my Greek team, so I'm with Portugal. And what's the fourth one? And what am I missing? Brazil, Croatia, I'm with Croatia because I like this generation of Croatia players.
Yeah, I'll be very disappointed if the one World Cup that I don't watch, this is the one that Holland finally wins. But yes,
well,
I'm probably just going to stick with England just because I lived in London, just one stop east of West Ham. So even though they're probably not, but yeah, I'll probably stick with England, or most likely I'll just be watching the Niners game.
You lived one stop east of West Ham. That's an episode. Glad you survived that.
Gladstone.
Okay, people. I'm usually for shorter episodes, but this was fun. Thanks, everyone. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.